So let's begin today's class. So just to give you all a little glimpse into the past so that we understand today's story better. So Iranian history as we know it of our times of the Zoroastrian kings was divided into five dynasties. It started off with the Peshadarian dynasty, the Peshadarian meaning the very first lawgivers. So those were the Peshadarian kings. And then we moved on to the Kayanian dynasty. That was followed by the three other dynasties known as the Parthian, the Achaemenian, also known as the Hakameenian, and finally the Sasanian. So today's story about King Kaykaus is from the Kayanian dynasty. Let's let's begin with the Kayanian dynasty. So the very first king of the Kayanian dynasty was King Kaikobad. Okay, now he wasn't born a king himself. He was he was living in the wilderness by himself, and one day he had a strange dream. In this dream he saw that two eagles were carrying a crown, and they were flying towards him and putting the crown on his head. Now the Iranian kingdom, there was quite some confusion, quite some turmoil. The reason being they had no leader, they had no king. So their greatest warrior Rustam, he had been advised by his father Zal to go and look for the next Iranian king. So when they came across Kaikobad, Kaikobad himself went up to Rustam and told him that, Rustam, this is the dream that I got in which the eagles came with a crown and put it on my head. So Rustam immediately understood that this is the man, he has been selected by God himself. And so Rustam, along with the other soldiers of the Iranian army, they returned to Iran, and there Kaikobad was established as the first king of the Kayanian dynasty. Now, during this time, there was a constant war between Iran and its neighbor Turan. Iran and Turan were constantly fighting, and Turan had breached the boundaries. So, in order to avoid that problem happening again, Kaikobad made sure that he'll put this problem to rest once and for all. So, they attacked Turan. Iran won the battle, and Kaikobad had established peace in Iran. His reign went on peacefully, and finally his son Kaikaus was made the king of Iran. Now let's begin the slideshow to understand. That is the representation of King Kaikobad. He was a wise and just king. After after he after his reign ended, his son Kaikaus became the king. Now Kaikaus, he he wasn't a very wise man as compared to his father. He wouldn't exactly listen to his elders all the time. He was very, the way we say it, bo masti khorche, notorious. So he wouldn't exactly pay attention to what everyone told him, and he would try to do things according to his whims and fancies. So one day in Kaikaus's court, an evil man sent by Ahriman himself, Ahriman the evil spirit, he sent a courtier disguised to Kaikaus's court, and they started singing praises about this place called Mazandaran. Now, Mazandaran is this province in Iran. If you all see, this is the map of modern day Iran, and the orange section highlighted is Mazandaran. So, Mazandaran in modern day Iran, it is a really, really beautiful province. So, when that evil courtier started singing praises about Mazandaran, Kaikaus said that Mazandaran is not in my control. I need to get it in my control. I need to capture Mazandaran. This is how Mazandaran looks even to this date. But now the problem was, long, long back in the Peshadarian dynasty, there was a king named Temurasp. Now, Temurasp had captured and, to put it in a sense, quarantined all the evil demons and spirits in this territory of Mazandaran. Are we together? Everyone with me so far? Can I get a thumbs up? We are in the territory of Mazandaran. Okay. So now there is evil quarantined in this beautiful territory of Mazandaran, but Kaikaus is adamant. Kaikaus wants to capture Mazandaran once and for all. So he informs his courtiers and the Iranian army that this is what I want to do. Now the courtiers, they cannot go against their king's wishes. So they said, okay. but they were really worried about what would happen about the country and the kingdom. So they again consulted the wise Iranian warrior Zal. Zal was the father of Rustam, the same warrior who ensured that Kaykobat becomes the king of Iran. So when Zal came to know about this, he traveled all the way to the king's territory from his territory Sistan. He came over to King Kekaus and advised him why it doesn't make sense to conquer Mazandaran, because Mazandaran had become a proper capital of evil. All the evil forces in the world, all the demons, all the spirits, they were all of them were living together, and it was very, very difficult, rather next to impossible, to conquer Mazandaran. But the king, he did not budge. He said, no, I have to conquer Mazandaran. I have to become greater than my predecessors. So Zal had no option. He did his best. He advised the courtiers, wished them good luck, and was hoping for the best when they proceed to Mazandaran. However, in 2 months, when the Iranian army attacked Mazandaran, they could not sustain the onslaught, the attack of the evil forces. It was too much for the Iranian army. They had never faced evil spirits in such large numbers, and all of a sudden, they were doomed. It became very, very difficult, and they were under the spell of this Dev, an evil spirit named Safed Dev, also known as the White Demon. Now, the Iranian army has been trapped. It has been captured by Safed Dev. Their king is trapped in Mazandaran while they are trying to capture it. What is going to happen now? Now, when back home in Iran, the others find out that their king is captured, they have no option but to again call Zal and Rustam. Now they knew that this was going to be troublesome. So Zal requested his son Rustam, the great Pelwan. He requests him that it is our duty to go and help our king in times of need. So you must go and rescue him and the Iranian army. Rustam was like, I would love to do that, but Mazandaran is months away. It will, by the time I reach there, it will take me 6 months to reach Mazandaran. If you all try to understand, the kingdom back then would be somewhere in the south. Mazandaran is the orange region highlighted in the north. So if we move southward, somewhere towards central Iran, probably that's where the king and his capital would have been. So for Rustam to travel all the way to Mazandaran, he said it would take him months. And by that time, the Iranian army, since they were captive, since they were captured, they wouldn't be able to remain much longer. And they will finish off the entire army and the king. So that's when Zal told Rustam that there is a secret, shorter route to reach Mazandaran. And that was known as the Hafta Khan. Now, the word Hafta Khan literally means 7 stages. So this short route, it was going through forests, and it was full of evil creatures and spirits, and no man had ever crossed it before to reach Mazandaran. But Zal was confident in the ability of his son Rustam. Rustam was the greatest warrior prince. And back then, for princes, they were not just trained to be warriors by becoming physically fit, but they had great spiritual powers in themselves as well, so that they could duel with and fight with and beat all these evil spirits and demons. So Rustam followed the advice of his father Zal. He set forth on the Hafta Khan. Now, the adventures of the Hafta Khan have been recounted in the Shahnameh by Firdausi in great detail. But one of the most well-known encounters of Rustam in the Hafta Khan was that with a white dragon, commonly known as Azda. Now back then, the authors, they weren't living in, the author of the Shahnameh Firdausi, he wasn't living in that day and age to know which creature Rustam had exactly fought. But in general, they were termed as Azda, which would have been something like a huge dragon or a serpent. So on the third stage of the Hafta Khan, which was supposed to be one of the most difficult of all the 7 stages, Rustam kills this white dragon, proceeds towards Mazandaran, completes all the 7 difficult stages, and finally enters Mazandaran. Now, Mazandaran, like we said, evil has captured the entire Iranian army. The king of Mazandaran is a sorcerer himself, and his great sorcerer, the Safed Dev, the white demon, he has kept the Iranian army under his control. Everyone has been captured. So Rustam, being Rustam, he has come to aid the Iranian army and save his king. He defeats the Safed Dev, and King Kaikaus manages to become the king of kings. Now, even when Kaikaus had ventured out to Mazandaran in the first place, he wouldn't have done it without seeking for divine help. Although he had gone against the wishes of his courtiers and everyone who advised him, Kaikaus prayed to Ava Ardavisur Banu. Even to this day, this has been mentioned in the Avayas that Kaikaus, in Avastha, he is known as Kava Usa. So in Kaikaus, he prays to Ava Ardavisur Banu and asks for this boon. He prays to Ava Yazad and tells me, please let me defeat the evil king of Mazandaran. Let me become the king of kings by defeating and conquering Mazandaran. Little did he know that Rustam would be the savior in this process. Ultimately, if you realize, Ava Ardavisur Banu did grant his boon, but had Rustam not been there, it wouldn't have been possible. So Rustam was the mechanism through which Ava Ardavisur Banu granted this boon to King Kaikaus. Now, one more very important pointer about all the kings of the Kayanian dynasty. Their name had a title to it known as Kai, and that denoted that they were from the Kayanian dynasty, and also they were known to be so radiant and noble. They had great connection with the divinities, with all the Yazads, with Sarosh Yazad, Ava Yazad, Hom Yazad. So whenever in times of need, whenever the country had any problems, they would always pray to these divinities and ask for help. And because of this reason, because of their close connection with God, because of their elevated spiritual status, they had a chore around them. Now, what is a chore? If you try to see, if even in one of the recent classes, Edward Parvez Baja had mentioned that on Jarthos Sahib's face, you see there's a halo around him, something like a sun. Yeah. So in case of the Kayanian kings, the chore existed and you could see it right away. Okay. So now King Kaikaus has become the king of Mazandaran. He's become the king of kings. Proceeding further, that is a statue of Rustam Pelwan, also known as Rustam the Great. These are paintings till date which are found in Iran. That is the white, on the left is Rustam defeating the white dragon. If you all can see, that's the white dragon's face to his left. And that is the Safed Dev that Rustam is killing in Mazandaran. Okay. Now I'll be handing over Kerman to finish the rest of the story. This is a painting of King Kaikaus. He has been coronated as the king of kings. So those are his subjects and other kings of other provinces who are coming and paying him tributes, because now he's the sovereign king. So King Kaikaus, after conquering Mazandaran, he became the king of kings. Kerman,
okay,
would you like to take over? Thank you.
Thank you, Sharad. Now, Kaikaus is an interesting character for us to learn many things in life. As human beings, we need to be humble. How much powerful we may be, but the most important virtue as a human being which we should have is being humble. Being humble to ourselves, being humble to God. There are many incidences in the life of King Kaikaus which shows us that being humble is always the best thing to be for the most powerful person in the world. Now, after becoming the king of the kings, what Kaikaus did was Kaikaus realized that the Devs who were in Mazandaran, had certain good technical knowledge of building palaces, certain technical knowledge in field of construction, in field of metallurgy. So what he started using their abilities to build his palaces and to make his kingdom more stronger. While doing so, Ahriman realized that he has made the demons powerless, but at the same time he is utilizing their capacity to the best of the mankind, which Hanuman did not like, and therefore he plotted against him once more. And this time, Iblis, in a form of a courtier, comes to King Kaus and says that you have already captured the whole of the earth. You are master of the earth. Now you should be a master of the heavens. So why don't you try and capture the heavens? Now, this is where again the ego of Kekaus comes into play, and it makes him think, yes, I can do that. If I can capture these thieves who are so powerful, who are the sorcerers and everything, why can't I capture heaven? So he makes a plan to reach to the heaven. What he does is he gets two babies of eagle from their nest, feeds them for a year, trains them nicely, and then he makes a flying throne. Sharada, can you go to the sorry. Hold on. I just moved away. Now once he became the king, Kekaus decides to survey his kingdom. So his at that point of time, kingdom of Iran was not just the kingdom of Iran, which you just now see on the screen. It extended all the way up to Red Sea, and on this side it extended all the way up to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Kyrgyzstan, and all these provinces. So it was a huge kingdom. So after he becomes the king, he decides that he wants to visit the nooks and corner of this kingdom to know what is going around, to understand the problems what the people have. So he could give them justice, he could give them solution to their problems. Then on his way, he visits a place called Hamavaran, which was one of the Hamavaran is basically today's Yemen. You could see on the map. Below Saudi Arabia, there is a small white blue country. If you can see my marker around. So that place at that point of time was known as Hamavaran. So when the king of Hamavaran knows that the sovereign Shah is coming to visit him, he decides to give him the welcome. But at the same time, he also decides to plot against him. He says that this is the right chance where I can capture the king and make him the prisoner. But for the first time, he does not do it, because when the Shah comes to know that the king of Hamavaran has a very beautiful daughter, he offers his hand in marriage to the princess. The king says that let me ask the princess, if she agrees, we will get the marriage and everything. So the princess agrees, and she becomes the second wife of Kaikaus. His first wife had already died by this time. So they get married, and the marriage is very pomp, and the couple returns back to the capital. The king and the new queen is celebrated and everything. But the king of Hamavaran has some evil plots in his mind. He thinks that somehow I have married my daughter to Kaikaus, but I don't like Kaikaus as a king. I want to be independent. I would like to be I would like to be independent from the control of Kaikaus. So what he does is he plots. He sends a very sweet sounding letter to Kaikaus saying that now you have become the son-in-law of the kingdom. So you please visit our kingdom. Please be our honorable guest. Please come honor us. So
Go ahead.
Now, now King Kaikavus plans to visit the kingdom, but the daughter Sudabe, his second, the Queen Sudabe, the daughter of the king of Hamavaran, knows his father very well. So she smells something fishy. He warns the king that you please don't go. I don't trust my father on this. You please don't go. Please be safe because you are now the king of the whole kingdom of Iran. And at that time, it was the rule if the king falls, by default, the kingdom falls. So it was not only the king was not only powerful, but king was also responsible for upholding the sovereignty of the kingdom.
So,
And that
Kerman, sorry
yes,
to interrupt. So, from what you're saying, basically, Iran was like a superpower. It was a huge kingdom, and
yes,
then all these small kingdoms. We spoke about Hamavaran, we spoke about Mazandaran. They were like tiny kingdoms, which may or may not have been under the control of Iran.
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So it was also important. That is why it was important for to save him from Mazandaran also. Because if he would have been killed in Mazandaran, if he would have been taken captive in Mazandaran, the king of Mazandaran would have automatically got hold of the whole superpower kingdom of Iran. And that is why the life of Kaikavus it is like today the life of the United States of the President of United States of America, the amount of protection which he is given. Why? Because if he is in danger, the whole nation falls into danger. Same thing applies to all the leaders of all the countries. Same way, Subeda, the wife of Kaikavus, I would request anyone who is annotating, please don't do that. So, his wife,
Sorry, Kerman, just a minute.
sorry,
Someone is saying your voice is not clear.
now,
Can everyone hear Kerman? Can I momentarily get thumbs up from everyone? Okay, go ahead.
yes. So, the daughter of the king of Hamavaran, Sudabe, who was the second queen of Kaikavus, wants him not to go to the kingdom of Hamavaran as a guest. But still, Kaikavus was, as usual, very ambitious, very willful about his own thoughts. He used, and as with his previous experiences, he was like not going to listen to anybody. He said, I have been invited as a Shah of the Shah, king of the kings. Why should not I take that honor? And with his trusted Pelwans like Giv, Gurdes, and others, he visits Hamawara. For the first week, they treat him very royally. He is given a good feast. It's like a party across the week. They are merrily having good food, enjoying dance, everything. And then once the king of Hamavaran feels that now it is the right time, at night what he does is he captures King Kaikavus and all of his team and puts them into a dungeon on the hill. And then he sends the letter to his daughter in Iran saying that now you can come back to the kingdom, leave the kingdom of Iran, come back to home. I have already captured your husband and his troops. Now they are under my control. Sudabe is very irritated with that. She gets very angry. She goes back to the kingdom and she fires back at his father that what have you done? This was an uncanny thing which you should have done. He is your son-in-law and at the same time he is the Shah of the Shah. You should have respected his position and everything. But the king of Hamavaran is not bothered by this. And soon the news of this capture reaches Iran. Now, again, it is the time for Rustam to step in. So Zal sends Rustam to Hamavaran with an army to free the king and the other Pelwans which were captured. On his way, Rustam sends the message to Hamavaran saying that you please release the king and his courtiers honorably. There will not be any fight. We will respect the treaties and everything, and everything will be sorted out peacefully. The king of Hamavaran is very adamant. He says, no, I will fight, whatever you do. I have captured the king of the kings, he will be my prisoner. Then Rustam says, I don't have an option except to fight with you. And on hearing about Rustam, the kingdom of Hamavaran is also frightened. So what he does is, he asked the small other kingdoms around to give help. So the kingdom of the Egypt, which you can see across the Red Sea, here he requests the king of Egypt to send the help. So the king of Egypt now sends a huge army to Hamawara. At the same time, the Berbers, the nomadic tribes who used to reside in this area of Turkey, also seek a good chance to fight against Rustam. They
Herman,
think,
sorry, can you repeat again the part? Where would Egypt be in this map? Roughly towards the south of Yemen?
to the west of Yemen.
The west of Yemen. So this would be modern day Africa.
Yes, modern day Africa.
Yeah. And what was Egypt known by? What?
Misra.
Misr. Okay, okay. So the king of Misr was the king of Egypt, and
Yes.
Hamawaran requested their help to fight Iran.
So he sends around 100 elephants with almost a huge army to fight against Rustam. And also the nomadic tribes who used to stay in the region of Turkey, which is above, the Berbers, also see this as a good chance to fight against the Iranian army. And so they also join the forces against Rustam. But as usual, Rustam was a person who would take no nonsense. And once he had decided on his mission, he would like do or die. Either I will die or I will finish my enemy. So that was that spirit of Rustam. But the important thing to learn from the spirit of Rustam is that he was strong enough, but his strength was always used for good purposes. We may be strong, we may be powerful, we may be physically robust, but that strength is useless till we use it only for the selfish means. Once when we put that same strength for the purpose of something divine or something good, then God also adds strength to us. And time and again, whenever we see that whenever Rustam was weakened by his enemy, he prays to the God to get more strength, and God always blesses him with his original strength back. This is only possible because Rustam used to use his powers for the country and for the God, which is a very important aspect to learn from Rustam. And again, this time he ends up saving Kaikous. He releases Kaikous from the dungeon, and by this time, what happens? Afrasiab, the new king of Turan, sees this as an opportunity because Rustam was away from Iran fighting in Yemen. Kaikous was imprisoned in Iran, so now Iran is kingless. So he starts attacking Iran, and he is almost at the gates of the capital city.
Where would Iran be? Where would Turan be in this scenario? Would it be Turkey?
Present day Iraq.
Present day Iraq. Oh, okay. So right next to Iran.
Yes.
And also, just to add a comment to what you said, Kerman, there's a very famous quote in English which goes as this: like should you have brain or should you have brawn? So in this case, Rustam had both brain and brawn.
Yes. So now they realize that Afrasiab is making a good time in Iran. He's harassing the people because the king was away, Rustam was away, so no one was there to defeat Afrasiab. So immediately they turned their attention to Iran, and Afrasiab is again defeated. Now the first brush between the Afrasiab and Rustam is a very interesting story. Because during the time of King Kaikobad, when Afrasiab was prince, he was not the king of Turan yet. But because Iran was kingless and the Rustam was in search of the new king, he had attacked Iran. And at that point of time, when they found out Kaikobad as the new king, under his leadership, they fought with Afrasiab. And during the battle, when Afrasiab approached Rustam to fight, Rustam was so strong that with one single hand, Rustam just picked him up from his horse, from his waist belt, and put him on his horse and dragged him to the tent of the king Kaikobad. Fortunately, Afrasiab was lucky at that time. He fell off the horse, and his bodyguards covered him, and Rustam could not capture him again. But at that point of time, Afrasiab had realized that the one person who could stop him from entering into Iran was Rustam. And the only time if he were to enter Iran and create menace, it was when Rustam was away. And this time he made that mistake. But fortunately, once from Hamavaran, when King Kaikous was freed, they again they marched immediately, swiftly back to Iran and they fought Afrasiyab. And this time Afrasiyab was defeated very badly. He again had to run away. And he could not even sue for the truce this time. They defeated him so badly. And this time he was defeated so badly that he felt bad actually in front of his own army. He was literally insulted in the way he was defeated. He could not stand in front of his army and he had to run away.
So Kerman, just a quick recap. This battle that you're talking about is between Iran and the territory of Hamavaran. Hamavaran is the modern day Yemen as pointed in the map. And the territory of Mazandaran was captured by King Kaikous, where he became the king of kings. Mazandaran is in modern day Iran, just on the border of the Caspian Sea. Till date, it is a very beautiful region. So much so that, we all go and pay our visits. We go to Gujarat, we go to Udwada, we go to Navsari, we go to Surat. Interestingly, the name Navsari is actually derived from a place in Mazandaran known as Sari. So Navsari in Gujarat was believed to be the new Sari, the Navsari, and it was found to be just as beautiful. It had a very similar climate to that of Sari, and it is said that the lands of Sari were so fertile. So when the Parsis who had landed in India thousands of years later, they found that the lands of Navsari are so fertile and the climate is also just as beautiful as Sari. So they named the region as Navsari. And till date, there is a saying in Gujarati which goes, कि तमे पत्थर भी रोपो नवसारी ની જમીનમાં તે भी ખીલી જાય, which means that even if you plant a stone, the land of Navsari is so fertile that even that stone will bloom. Of course, that is a hyperbole, but that is trying to denote the kind of beauty, the fertility of that region. And then Kerman, coming back to the story, sorry we diverted a bit. You were also speaking about the birds. You said that Kaikous was tempted by some evil spirit. So what was that about?
Okay, so I'll counter this now. That's an interesting part. See, what happens is when we grow powerful in life, at any juncture, we may be the most intelligent of the student in the class. We may be the most fastest of the lot in the class, or we may be the most strongest of the lot in the class. We sometimes get this ego ke Maharaj wo koi nahi. Okay, and then we try to attempt something which is beyond our power. And we try to challenge God. It is that God who has given us those capabilities, who has made us something a step ahead from someone else. But rather than being humble, the ego comes into play. We feel that Maharaj જેવું કોઈ નહીં. અરે હું કરું એટલે હું જ કરું. બીજું કોઈ એવું કરી જ નહીં શકે. And that same ego again popped up somewhere into Kaikous. And this time Evil used this, and Evil told him that you have already captured the whole kingdom of the earth. You are ruling a superpower kingdom. Why don't you try capturing the heavens? So that is how Kaikous decides to capture the heavens. And now what he does is he makes a flying throne. As I said earlier, he had trained eagles to carry his throne. But how he does it? We have heard about the idea of carrot and stick. Hey, Sherry, can you share that image? And see that this image is very representative. Like if you want to make a lazy horse run, always tie a carrot in front of him. He will try to get that carrot. Though the carrot will still go further ahead, but he will still keep on running. The same idea was used by King Kaikous. What he did was he made a golden throne, and across the golden throne he put two spears vertically, and on those spears on the four sides he put the pieces of meat which you could see here, the four corners. Okay, and then these eagles who were sitting on those sidebars of the thrones, they tried to reach this meat because they were hungry. And in that attempt, they started flying. And when they started flying, the throne started ascending into the air. But after a long journey, the birds were now tired because they were trying to reach the meat. They could not reach the meat because meat was tight. And as they flew, the meat used to travel along with them at a distance. So now they were tired. So slowly they started descending. And when they descended, the throne came crashing down in a jungle. And it was this time when Kaikous realized his folly. He realized that he had done a big error by thinking himself equivalent to God. He was not equivalent to God. He was an humble servant of God. God had blessed him with this spiritual powers, this physical powers, this particular special position in Iran. And he was somewhere blinded by his victory. It normally happens that sometimes if we are on the top of our performance, we get blinded by our victory. And this is a great lesson to learn from him, that even if you are on the topmost level of your life, even if you are on the best part of your life, always remember, be thankful to God, because it is because of Him you have been into that position, and be humble to others. Don't think that you have achieved something and others have lost. No, it is not that others have lost. You can you can rise up by climbing on someone's shoulder, but don't forget the shoulder that has aided you to climb. Always remember that, and always be thankful to God. That is how Kaikous realizes his mistake. He asks for an apology from the God. ખુદાઈ પાસે માફી માંગે છે. એકદમ નામસોસ થઈ જાય છે. ખુદાઈને કહે છે કે મને માફ કરજો, મારાથી ભૂલ થઈ ગઈ કરીને. And by this time he loses his powers in doing so. Then God says કે no, okay, તમે ઈરાનને વચ્ચે ઘણું કીધેલું છે, તમારા સારા એનાથી ઘણું કીધેલું છે, હું તમને માફ કરું છું, પણ આ લેસન તમારા જિંદગીમાં તમે યાદ રાખજો, and you please be humble. So this is how when he tries to fly, he is taught a lesson by God. Now, that is how he learns the lesson. He comes back to Iran. He starts ruling again with a fair and just outlook. The people are happy and everything. But it's always that everything is not happy-go-lucky in life. There is somewhere God tests you. He puts you to test. He sees how strong you are emotionally. And that is where it happens when it comes to his son Xiaox. As I had discussed earlier, he had a son from his first wife. His name was Xiaox. But because the child was motherless and Kaikous was busy with his kingdom, he had handed over this child to Rustam Pelwan for training and bringing him up as a mentor. Because he considered Rustam to be the best mentor who could train the prince to be the good next king of Iran. And that is how Xiaox grew up in Sistan more than in the capital. During this time, Xiaox grew up to be a very handsome prince. He was well trained by Rustam in all walks of life, spiritual, physical, whatever walks of life. He was trained very well. So when he returned back to the capital, Sudabe saw him and Sudabe fell in love with this young prince. But Xiaox was so much well trained morally also that he refused any kind of relationship with Sudabe. He said, "You are like my mother. I cannot look at you with such kind of a thing." So Sudabe felt very bad. He said, "How can he? I am so beautiful. His father fell in love with me. How can he deny me? I am not ugly." So what Sudabe did was Sudabe tried to play victim and he tried to frame him in wrong charges. He reported to King Kaos that Xiaox had mistreated her. Okay. So Xiaox was treating her in a Now, at that point of time, to prove his innocence, Shyawak was asked to pass the fire test. Because fire, he worshipped fire, and fire was considered to be the purest of all the elements. So if Shyawak was of a wrong character, of a bad character, the fire would have burned him. But Shyawak agreed to take the fire test. And when he agreed to take the fire test, he came out clean from the fire test without a scratch. And this immediately proved to the king and the courtiers that Shyawak was of a very clean character. It was Sudabe who had some evil intentions. But this, and the king was so angry that he ordered the queen to be beheaded as a punishment. But Shyawak again showed a very good human face. He asked the king for the pardon. He said, please pardon the queen. He is your queen. He is the queen of Iran. He is like my mother. Please don't kill her. Please let her live. And that is how Sudabe was pardoned by the king, and she was granted life after the death sentence. But the relationship between Sudabe, Shyawak and Kaikawus was already on a bed. So Shyawak finally left for Turan. Shyawak was well trained by Rustam. Afrasiab knew it. Afrasiab wanted someone who could compete with Rustam. And it's like, who would be the best? If a particular person is trained by someone, he would be the best person to fight that person. And that is how when Shyawak reached Turan, he was welcomed in Turan by Afrasiab. He was given a very good treatment. And when he reached the court, Afrasiab asked him to prove his powers, how strong you are. So he said, I can fight any of your Pelwans, you tell me. So the king Afrasiab asked two of his Pelwans to fight Shyawak. And Shyawak easily defeated them. So one of the Pelwan among them now envied him. He saw that the king had, Shyawak was becoming the favorite of the king. King was listening to him time and again. So now he felt envy about it. Okay. So he decided to do something to lure Shyawak away from his path. And that is where the envy comes into play. This happens with all of us also somewhere. We have some good friends. Okay, we have some good friends in our school, but there are other new friends who join and they try to become our favorites. They try to, pin something against each other, and then we end up fighting. Same thing happened with Shyawak. When this other Pelwan in the court of Afrasiab started telling the king that Shyawak is basically from Iran, he is trained by Rustam, so he is come here as a spy. You be careful, this and that and everything against Shyawak. Slowly, gradually, Afrasiab started believing that Pelwan, and he put Shyawak into prison. And later on, Shyawak was beheaded on the order of Afrasiab, because wrongly being proven that he was a spy of Iran and he had entered Turan to spy on the Turanian army. Now this news of his death, when it reached Iran, Rustam Pelwan was very angry and he marched into Turan and avenged his death. And in due process, Kai Khusru, who was the son of Shyawak, was also in Turan at that point of time. He had went off with his father. He brought him back to Iran and he was the next king of the Kayanian dynasty. And Kaikawus died peacefully, handing over the kingdom to his grandson. He was happy now to get off from the throne because his grandson was also well trained and he knew that he is handing it over to the right person. So here we end with the story of King Kaikawus.